Well, you know, it's the era of having it all, isn't it? And Mercedes apparently agrees. With this CLS63, you've got AMG power and good fuel economy. You've got saucy coupe lines and a door for every passenger. It's a statement and an exercise in conspicuous consumption. Let's drive this 2013 CLS63 with the AMG Performance Package and check the tech. First of all, a CLS, even before it becomes an AMG car, is kind of an exercise in very expensive Swiss Army knife making. Everything is rammed into one package, all those attributes we just talked about. And they do a pretty good job of it, but from the outside, you might never guess this car is based on an E-Class. It's a very different look on the exterior and the massing and the proportions of it. It's also going to fool you on the inside, where you'll find there is no such thing as a basic CLS63. As you might imagine, everything in here is top drawer. The materials are phenomenal. It's a little on the gilded side for my taste, certainly compared to the very business-like cockpit of a BMW or an Audi. And as you can see, you're surrounded by a forest of controls. Let's get into a few of them, starting with this command controller here. This is classic Mercedes stuff, operating an interface that we've seen fairly consistently before. There's a ribbon on the top. There's sort of what I would call your content in the middle, and then there's another ribbon of settings or options on the bottom. That's the Mercedes interface. Now, if you go to this globe icon on the far right, that's where the internet stuff lives. Check it out. We've got a web browser. It's not much of one. It's a clunky thing to use because obviously it's not touchscreen. It's a German car after all. More useful are the Mercedes-Benz apps, and I use more with quotes around it. I'm not a big fan of this app suite, which is playing catch-up right now. Its competitors have been doing apps longer. Mercedes needs another rev, I think, to really get this right. The first issue you can see right there. Man, this thing is slow to get a data connection. Once it does, here's what you'll get. Google local search is the most useful thing here on its face. You've also got Yelp, Facebook, News, and this one's new, My Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. You can pay your car payment from here. The local search, again, long pause to buffer between these things. Man, it'll kill you. And you can search near you or along the route or some other city. Imagine typing that in at this tedious terminology. Now, once I get my Google local search results, they're nicely ranked according to some logic. It's clearly not by distance. I don't even want to try and find the menu to change that. You do have Google Street View and Panoramio stills from the community you'd like to look at. And this theme goes on through these different apps. The other one I want to show you is Facebook. First of all, right, why Facebook in the car? And when the car is moving, you can't do much with it, which is fine with me, except you can do a couple things while driving. For example, you can look at your events people have invited you to, check out the details and RSVP to them, but you can't do anything with walls or news. Now, once you leave the interface on the head unit, which as I've shown you is kind of hit and miss, you get to some more hit and miss down here with the driveline controls. I think it's excessive complication. The shifter starts off with a park button, but everything else is a shifter detent. I'm not big on those two different kinds of behaviors to do the same thing, which is control the driveline. Once you're in park and you want to come out, you do one little detent and it hops straight to neutral. You cannot go to reverse without then going two detents the other way. Why is that? And then it's a couple more detents down to drive. So you never know if it's one or two detents, and for some reason you got to skip reverse on your way out of park. Made me nuts. Over here is your personality knob for your powertrain. C is, I call it comfort. They call it controlled performance or something. Sport, Sport Plus, and manual only. What this is going to do is sharpen up throttle response, RPM holding, speed of shifts by this automated transmission, a whole variety of power delivery programs. Down here would be normally considered a traction control defeat, but they actually define it as a sport mode. Down here, this controls your adaptive suspension, which is not just shocks, but also anti-sway technology to keep this guy flat, as well as to firm up damper response. 3 modes on that. And then you've got an AMG button, which you just simply press and hold to memorize whatever you've done with everything else. It's basically like a radio preset for the drivetrain and suspension. Sure, it's ideal if you're the very serious, aggressive driver who really dials a car in specifically. But if you're doing that, do you do it in a 4,200-pound 4-door sedan? That makes no sense. Now, once you open the extremely wide opening hood on this CLS63, a nice Mercedes service thing, you find a big old motor under here. The 63 tells you nothing on the tail because up front we have a 5.5 liter V8 with a turbo on each bank. We have that AMG performance package. You know it because you see a carbon fiber cover here. That means we have 560 horse, 590 foot-pounds of torque. Crazy numbers. All of that gets this 4,200-pound car up to 60 in 4.5 seconds, or a few tenths less because we got the performance package. Goes out through a 7-speed, rear-wheel drive only. Now this is a 13. The 2014 car gets big changes. First of all, the AMG performance numbers become more or less the base power numbers. The transmission goes to a 7-speed dual-clutch automated manual, and they're going to get all-wheel drive in the mix. So it's a very different car for 2014, just FYI. Now all of this weight, speed, and displacement should add up to some horrendous MPG figures. But it doesn't. 1625 is the EPA rating on this guy. I've driven cars much slower that use a lot more fuel. That's pretty impressive. But now the real fun with this vehicle. Let's put her in manual. Let's drop down a couple gears and let's hit it. Wow. This car has locomotive power. I mean, just crazy power, as you can imagine from those numbers and that kind of engine architecture. However, I never found this car to really feel sharp. Powerful and sharp are two different things. This car is definitely the former, but every shift in every mode feels a little bit laggy to me. Certainly, even Sport Plus was a surprise in that it's kind of asleep at the switch to my particular taste. I don't know. I found myself getting on the paddles a lot, but not because I wanted to, because I had to, because the shift programming was letting me down. There it goes. Another one where it was caught flat-footed. It had to unbury itself from like 7th at 55 miles an hour. This car is always trying to go along at like 1,500 RPM to save fuel, but the programming just bothers me sometimes. So in sum, this is a great car for the long trip, boulevard cruising, maybe a road that's got a little bit of snaking to it. But if you want to take this car out and toss it around on one of those more fun, smaller, twistier roads, it's not going to make you as happy as, say, a BMW 640i Grand Coupe, which has a much lighter on its feet nature. Of course, all that can be forgotten when you drop it into third and just step on it. Okay, let's price our 2013 CLS63. This guy goes out at about 98.6 base. And that doesn't include the AMG performance package, that hotter engine. That's going to add $7,300. Part of that goes to that carbon fiber cover. We'll never know how much. A package of all the driver assist technologies, active, blind spot, lane departure, and adaptive cruise is a little under $3 grand. All in, you've bitten off about $108,000 worth of I want to have it all. It is all here. It's not the best execution on a lot of the technology, and it's not the kind of driving experience you may be looking for, but if you want power, elegance, practicality, and prestige, there's a lot to see here.